Before the story begins, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so this channel can keep growing and bring you even more compelling stories. I am Hannah, and the day I changed the locks on my house, my mother left me 6 voicemails calling me cruel. By sunset, the same people who had laughed at my 11-year-old son were standing on my porch, trying keys that no longer worked. I watched them through the window and thought something that should have broken me. This feels more like relief than grief. And that was when I knew I had waited too long to do it. For years, I had believed that keeping the peace was the same thing as being a good daughter. I thought open doors meant trust. I thought saying yes made me generous. I thought if I stayed calm enough, gave enough, forgave enough, eventually my family would start treating me like someone they respected instead of someone they could lean on forever. I was wrong. All I had really done was make myself useful. And in some families, once you become useful, people stop seeing your kindness as a gift. They start seeing it as a system they own. I live in a small blue house on a quiet street with my son, Owen. He is 11, thoughtful, and the kind of child who notices things other people miss. He loves circuits, old tools, weather sensors, broken lamps, tiny motors, and anything that can be taken apart and understood. He keeps a notebook full of sketches for little machines he wants to build one day. Some pages are labeled carefully. Some are covered in arrows and ideas that only he understands. He is not loud. He does not perform for attention. He does not walk into a room expecting it to clap for him. He just builds, studies, wonders, and quietly makes sense of the world. My family never knew what to do with a child like that. My sister Rachel has a daughter named Sadie, and Sadie is a competitive figure skater. She is talented, disciplined, and honestly very good. She has medals, polished routines, expensive dresses, photos under bright lights, and the kind of talent adults love to point at because it is easy to explain, easy to admire, and easy to show off. My parents adore that world. They understand it. They know how to brag about it. They know how to repeat it to friends over dinner and church coffee and family phone calls. They call Sadie gifted. They call her the future. They call her proof that greatness runs in the family. Owen never got language like that. When he fixed my mother's old kitchen fan with a screwdriver and a bent piece of wire, my father said, "That's nice," and turned back to the television. When Owen's teacher sent home a note saying he had designed a small rain alert prototype for the science corner at school, my mother smiled and asked if he was still doing those little gadget things. Those little gadget things. That was how they spoke about the way his mind worked. As if curiosity was cute but temporary. As if quiet brilliance only mattered after it had already become profitable or famous. As if a child's gifts were only real if strangers could applaud them. I saw all of it. I just kept shrinking it in my own head, so I would not have to confront what it meant. 3 years ago, Rachel called me crying. Her marriage had collapsed, bills were piling up, and Sadie's skating costs were becoming impossible. It was supposed to be temporary. That was how she said it. Just enough to get through the season. Just enough so Sadie would not lose her coach. Just enough so one hard chapter would not ruin everything she had worked for. I had a stable consulting job. I worked from home. Owen and I were comfortable. So I said yes. At first, it was one payment. Then it was travel fees. Then coaching. Then ice time. Then a competition package. Then a dress. Then another season, because stopping now would undo all the progress. Somewhere along the way, my help stopped feeling like help to them. No one said thank you for very long. No one asked how long I could keep doing it. No one checked whether I still wanted to. They just built my support into their expectations and called that family. That is the part nobody talks about. The first time you rescue someone, they call you kind. The 5th time, they call you reliable. The 10th time, they stop calling it anything at all. It becomes background. It becomes normal. It becomes one more thing you are supposed to do because you are the one who can. And when people get used to your stability, they stop seeing the cost of it. They only see the comfort it provides them. I had noticed that pattern before the night everything broke. I had just never let myself name it. It was easier to think my parents were excited about skating than to admit they only seemed to value the children in our family when their talents looked impressive from across a room. Some gifts are quiet. Some grow slowly. Some do not sparkle under lights. And those are exactly the gifts certain families never learn how to honor. Everything changed at my father's retirement dinner. It was at a steakhouse he loved, all dark wood and heavy chairs and framed photos that tried too hard to look important. There were 8 of us at the table. My parents, Rachel and Sadie, me and Owen, my Aunt Denise, one of my father's old coworkers. For most of the meal, things were normal in that brittle family way where everyone behaves just well enough to pretend nothing is wrong. Owen sat beside me drawing tiny gear shapes on a paper napkin. Sadie was talking about a training camp she hoped to attend in Chicago. My father was in a good mood, and that should have warned me. His best moods had always required an audience. Halfway through dinner, he pushed his chair back and lifted his glass. Everyone got quiet. He thanked people for coming. He talked about hard work, legacy, discipline, and the importance of family. Then he turned toward Sadie with a smile so proud it almost looked tender. He said, "This girl knows what commitment looks like. She sacrifices. She listens. She wins. She's the one carrying this family forward." Rachel looked like she might cry from happiness. My mother was glowing. Sadie lowered her head and smiled into her drink. Then my father laughed softly and said, "At least some kids in this family know the difference between real talent and hiding in a bedroom with wires and scraps pretending it matters." The room did not go silent. That would have required shame. Instead, my mother gave a nervous laugh. Rachel looked down too late. My father's friend smiled into his glass. My aunt stared at her plate. And my son froze. He did not cry. He did not defend himself. He just lowered his eyes and folded the corner of his napkin over and over like his hands needed something to do, while the rest of him disappeared. I cannot describe that feeling without sounding violent. It was not just anger. It was clarity. It was the sound of a line breaking inside me. I set my fork down and looked at my father. My voice came out calmer than I felt. "Then I guess you can cover Sadie's spring coaching bill yourself." Rachel's head snapped toward me. My mother whispered my name like I was embarrassing her. My father reached for my wrist under the table and muttered, "Not here." I pulled my hand away, stood up, took Owen's jacket, and said, "No. Actually, here is perfect." We left before dessert. The ride home was so quiet it made every stoplight feel loud. Owen sat in the back seat looking out the window. I kept waiting for him to say he was fine, because quiet children learn early how to protect adults from discomfort. But when we got home, he took off his shoes, sat at the kitchen table, and traced the wood grain with one finger. I was putting leftovers in the fridge when he asked, in the smallest voice I had ever heard from him, would Grandpa like me better if I did something people could clap for? I turned around so fast I almost dropped the container in my hand. He would not look at me. "I know I'm not like Sadie," he said. "I just didn't know that made me the kind of kid people laugh at." If my father's words at dinner had hurt me, that sentence destroyed me. I crossed the kitchen, knelt beside Owen, and held his face in both hands. "Listen to me," I said. "There is nothing wrong with the way your mind works. Nothing. You do not need applause to matter. You do not need to become somebody easier to show off just to deserve love." He nodded, but his eyes were full of the kind of doubt children get when the people who should have protected them are the ones who taught them to question their worth. That night, he slept in my bed for the first time in over a year. After he fell asleep, I lay there in the dark and replayed every moment I had excused over the years. Every comparison. Every dismissive smile. Every time my family had celebrated what was visible and brushed aside what was quiet. Every payment I had made while telling myself I was helping out during a difficult time. Every sign that my role in that family had become less daughter, less sister, and more safety net with a checking account attached. Around midnight, I opened my banking app. The next transfer to Sadie's skating coach was already scheduled for the morning. $3,800. I stared at it for a long time. I thought about Rachel's divorce. I thought about Sadie's hard work. I thought about how easy it would be to let the payment go through one more time and deal with the rest later. Then I thought about Owen folding a napkin while adults laughed at him. I canceled the transfer. For 3 days, no one contacted me. That silence told me more than any apology could have. They could all sit comfortably with Owen's hurt. But the second money was interrupted, I knew they would find their voices again. On the fourth day, Rachel texted. Coach says the payment didn't go through. Was there a bank issue? I wrote back, no issue. I canceled it. Her reply came almost immediately. You can't be serious. You're doing this over one joke. One joke. That was what she called a room full of adults laughing at a child until he started questioning whether he was lovable. I did not answer. By noon, she had sent 6 more messages. She said I was punishing Sadie for something she did not say. She said I was jealous. She said I was trying to ruin years of work because I was emotional. Then my mother called. Her voice was soft in the way people get soft when they are about to ask for something selfish and want to sound noble while doing it. Hannah, please don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Sadie has worked so hard. Rachel is under so much stress. I said, did any of you think about stress when my son got humiliated in public? She sighed. Your father was trying to praise Sadie. He says things the wrong way sometimes. I asked, and what was your excuse when you laughed? She went quiet for a second, then changed direction so smoothly it almost impressed me. This affects a child. I said yes. Mine. That evening my father called. He did not bother pretending to be gentle. You've made your point, he said. Now act like an adult. I asked him if acting like an adult meant mocking an 11-year-old at a family dinner. He was silent for a beat, then said, boys need thicker skin. The world doesn't reward sensitivity. I could feel my jaw tightening. The world also doesn't reward grown men who bully children. He ignored that. He always ignored anything that made him sound small. So I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest for years. Why is it always me, Dad? Why am I always the one expected to fix what Rachel can't cover? He answered so fast it was almost casual. Because you can. That was it. No gratitude. No embarrassment. No softness. Just the truth, plain and cold. Because you can. Something settled inside me when he said that. Not anger this time. Recognition. I finally understood that my family did not come to me because they trusted me most or loved me best. They came to me because I was the stable one. The available one. The one who had room to spare. And they had quietly turned my room into their right. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my house with soup and bakery bread like she was arriving for an ordinary visit. Owen was in the living room working on a small circuit board, and she kissed the top of his head as if nothing had happened. She asked him whether school was going well. She complimented my curtains. She admired the flowers by the sink. Then, 20 minutes later, while the soup warmed on the stove, she finally said what she had come to say. Rachel got a call this morning. If the account isn't settled by Friday, Sadie could lose her training slot. I leaned against the counter and waited. She kept going. This is a young girl's future, Hannah. I said, so was Owen's sense of safety in this family. My mother pressed her lips together. You're making this into something permanent when it doesn't have to be. That sentence stayed with me because it revealed everything. In her mind, the real tragedy was not what had happened to Owen. The real tragedy was that I might stop absorbing it quietly. She was willing to treat a child's humiliation as temporary, but my refusal to fund her preferred version of the family, that was the problem. What hurt most was not even what she said. It was what she never asked. She did not ask whether Owen had slept well after that dinner. She did not ask whether he wanted to see his grandfather again. She did not ask whether he felt embarrassed or ashamed or confused. She did not ask how it feels for a child to realize that the people who should delight in him have only ever measured him against someone easier to celebrate. She asked about fees, deadlines, stress, and consequences. She asked about the child whose talent could be displayed. Not the child whose heart had been bruised in plain sight. That was when I understood something I wish more people said out loud. In some families, loud emergencies always swallow quiet pain. A performance fee matters more than a wounded child because one is visible and the other requires empathy. And empathy is much harder than applause. After my mother left, Owen came into the kitchen and asked, "Is Grandma mad at you?" I said, "Probably." He thought about that for a moment. Then he asked, "Are you mad at them?" I looked at him and told the truth. Yes. But more than that, I'm done letting people make you feel like you have to earn respect. He nodded slowly, like he was putting the sentence somewhere safe inside himself. A week later, my parents texted and said they wanted to come over to clear the air. I almost refused. But some foolish part of me still wanted proof that they understood what they had done. So I said yes. They arrived on a Sunday afternoon with pastries and a board game, carrying normalcy like a disguise. My mother sat with Owen in the living room and asked to see the little robot he had been working on. My father wandered through the house making comments about shelves and paint colors and how nice it must be to work from home. Everything about him felt rehearsed. Everything about my mother felt too bright. For half an hour, I let myself hope maybe this was real. Maybe they had come to apologize. Maybe they had finally realized they could not smooth this over with guilt and logistics. Then my mother started talking to Owen too loudly, asking one cheerful question after another like she was trying to hold his full attention in place. At almost the same time, I heard a drawer slide open down the hall. I walked to my office and found my father standing behind my desk with one of my file folders in his hand. Another folder was on the floor. My file box was open. His phone was angled toward a stack of clipped papers, invoices, savings records, and the first pages of the education account I had started for Owen years earlier. He turned too slowly. That was how I knew he did not even have the instinct to be ashamed. "What are you doing?" I asked. He straightened and said, with irritation instead of guilt, "I wanted to see how bad things really are. You keep acting like this is about principle, but from where I stand, you can afford to help." My mother appeared in the doorway behind me, and her face gave her away before she spoke. She knew. She had known exactly what he was doing. She had been keeping Owen occupied while my father went looking for proof that my no did not deserve to be respected. In that moment, every doubt I had left disappeared. They had not come to apologize. They had come to audit me. They had come into my house, used my child as a distraction, and searched through private documents because they believed my resources were still open for negotiation. I took the folder from my father's hand and said, "Get out." He laughed once, ugly and short. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I am reacting exactly enough." My mother tried to step in. "We were only trying to understand." I turned to her and said, "You were trying to verify whether I had enough money for you to ignore my boundary." Neither of them had a good answer for that. My father muttered something about family transparency. I said, "Families need permission. Families need respect. Families do not search private records because they think they are entitled to a different answer than the one they were given." I opened the front door and pointed outside. "Leave." They left without saying goodbye to Owen. When the door shut behind them, I stood in the hallway shaking, not because I felt unsure, but because I finally did not. That kind of certainty has its own violence. It tears through every excuse you built to stay comfortable. That night, I sat on the floor beside my bed and thought about the difference between revenge and a boundary. Revenge wants someone else to hurt. A boundary wants the hurting to stop. I was not trying to punish my family for not being perfect. I was trying to protect my son from a version of family that kept teaching him the wrong lesson. That love belonged to the loudest child. That usefulness mattered more than respect. That titles gave people access, even when they had not earned trust. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house and asked for every spare key. My father opened the door looking angry before I even spoke. My mother hovered behind him, folded into herself in that way she gets when she knows she is wrong, but wants the comfort of being seen as reasonable anyway. "I want the keys," I said. "All of them." My father laughed bitterly. "This is insane." I said no. What was insane was mocking my child, then coming into my house to go through my financial records and still expecting me to keep paying for Rachel's life. My mother said, "No one is asking you to pay for her life." I looked at her and said, "Then what exactly have the last 2 weeks been?" No one answered. My father said, "You're tearing this family apart over one dinner." I took a breath and answered slowly, "No. That dinner revealed what this family has been for a long time. Yesterday proved it. You did not lose access because of one bad joke. You lost access because you made my son feel small, then treated my home, my privacy, and my money like they were still yours. My mother disappeared down the hall and returned with 2 keys on an old silver ring. She placed them in my hand without meeting my eyes. My father said, "You'll regret this when you calm down." I closed my fingers around the keys and said, "The only thing I regret is how long I mistook being useful for being loved." By that afternoon, every lock on my house had been changed. I updated the garage code, the alarm code, the passwords to every shared account they had ever touched. Then I blocked numbers. Not because I wanted drama. Because I wanted silence. Real silence. The kind that does not come with guilt humming underneath it. Rachel cried and said I had ruined Sadie's season. My aunt said I was being harsh. My father sent an email from an address I did not recognize and called me selfish. I read none of it twice. For the first time in my life, I understood that explaining yourself to people committed to using you is just another form of surrender. Sadie did lose her training package. Rachel could not catch up on the fees. My parents could not carry costs they had always assumed I would absorb. I felt sorry for Sadie. I did. She had worked hard. But feeling sorry for someone is not the same thing as volunteering to keep a harmful pattern alive. Compassion does not require self-betrayal. I wish more women were taught that sentence early. And Owen started changing in small, beautiful ways. First, he stopped asking whether we had to go to family events. Then he started leaving his tools out on the dining room table again, which told me he no longer felt he had to hide what he loved. Then one Saturday morning, he asked if we could go to the hardware store because he needed a better sensor for a project he wanted to enter in the district science fair. For 3 weeks, our kitchen looked like a tiny workshop. Wires, plastic bins, soldering mats, index cards covered in measurements. He built a simple flood alert system for low basements, something that could detect rising water and trigger a light and sound warning before the damage got bad. It was practical, thoughtful, and quietly brilliant, exactly the kind of thing my family had never known how to praise because it did not glitter. The day of the fair, he wore a button-down shirt that was slightly too big and explained his project to the judges with a voice that shook on the first sentence and steadied by the third. He did not win first place. He won second overall and received a special mention for innovation. But when he ran toward me holding that ribbon, smiling so hard he forgot to be shy, it felt bigger than any first-place trophy in the world. That night, he set the ribbon on the kitchen counter and said, almost casually, "Mom, I think I like making useful things more than impressive things." I smiled at him and said, "Those are usually the things that matter longest." He nodded like that answer fit him. Maybe that is all any of us are trying to find, a life that fits without asking us to become louder, shinier, or easier to display. My family wanted children who made them feel proud in public. I want a child who feels safe being fully himself in private. Those two visions were never going to survive in the same room forever. People say family is everything. I do not believe that anymore. Love is everything. Respect is everything. Safety is everything. Family only deserves to matter when it protects those things. And if it asks your child to shrink so someone else can shine, then closing the door is not cruel. Sometimes, it is the first honest act of love in a very long time.